This is the We Built This Business podcast. Today, we're running our how-to mini-series where we speak with a business owner who is an expert in a particular area so that we can learn and do a deep dive and find out more information to help our own businesses. We're back this week with another how-to episode. Today, I'm pleased to have Hannah Zora Strong on the We Built This Business podcast, talking about how to get customers locally using Google advertising. Hannah is a pay-per-click advertising expert who specialises in getting brands for local customers. Hannah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Dan. Nice to meet you.
So, Hannah, can you tell me a bit more about Zora Marketing?
Yeah, so I was heading up the PPC teams at a couple of Northeast digital agencies, and then took a break to have my kids and came back, and I realised that you probably faced this before when you become a manager and then you're so far away from the detail of actually working with customers, driving the results, and that's the bit that I really missed. So I did a bit of freelancing while I was on maternity leave, or throughout both on maternity leaves, and then when I came back to work, I was like, I'm ready to set my own thing up. So I've been running Zora Marketing for the last 2 years now. I've been in PPC since 2014. So yeah, been a wild ride, but I'm really pleased with setting myself up.
Brilliant. Sounds great. And how have you found the transition from working for someone else to working for yourself?
I think because when I was at the agencies, it was like running your own business anyway. Like we had our own P&L, we had our own training budgets, and you had to hold yourself accountable. So moving the transition to kind of just me, I already had the idea of what capacity would look like and how many clients I could take on and what my ideal customer may be. So I feel like that gave me a good footing to start the business well. But it was just obviously the juggle of having the kids, working around clients, how to find clients. So I think it's been good. It's just, been a learning curve because ultimately the buck stops with me. You know, if I have a sick day, it's just me. And learning, like you have to, with the digital industry changing so much all the time, you have to hold yourself accountable. You have to do all the reading yourself. There's no one else to learn from apart from yourself. So it's a kind of always be learning mentality, but it's good because there's always something to learn. So be good.
Yeah, definitely. The market never stays the same, that's for sure, especially with AI and everything coming forward over the next couple of years. So let's start with getting customers locally on Google. So if I own a high street retailer, as an example, how would you set up a strategy to get customers locally?
So the majority of my clients that have like a physical base also trade online. So you'll probably find this commonplace if you sell clothing or hardware, for example. You can accept customers nationally. You might have a warehouse or ship your stock from your physical high street store. So in terms of e-commerce, it's using shopping campaigns, search campaigns, performance max campaigns, but they're on a national basis. So it's about making sure your feed is well optimized, making sure your titles and descriptions match what potential customers might be looking for, having high quality imagery, really giving Google as much ammo as possible, making sure your attributes, colors, size, patterns, all of those attributes in your stock, in your inventory are clear, as many are filled in as possible, to kind of give Google the ammo to get as many impressions and hopefully clicks and sales as possible. So that's it from an e-commerce perspective. The way e-com crosses over with local campaigns is through a different campaign format called local inventory ads, and they basically are a shopping ad format for if people are in the nearby vicinity. So you might find that you're looking for vinyl flooring for your bathroom, for example. So you might search for that patterned vinyl flooring on Google, and B&Q do this really well. So you'll probably see them come up. But you'll see the shopping ad itself, the retailer underneath, and then there'll be a little piece of text underneath that says nearby, or it'll say kind of 1.1 miles away. So that's really useful to drive footfall because you're saying to Google, this is all my stock, these are all the things I sell, but it's being able to link in your inventory stock system into Google. So you're saying, I have this item at this store and it best matches the user query, and you're saying it's a mile away, and then someone's I'm sitting in Newcastle now, but if I'm moving to Manchester, or I'm sitting in Coventry, for example, the inventory may change depending on what you've got in your local store. So if you're a multi-store retailer, you can plug in your system to what you've got in the physical nearby store, or if you've got just one shop on the high street, you can do the same, but you obviously just got one shop. So as long as the local inventory ads match your stock, that's all you need to kind of plug Google into your in-store inventory, and away you go. If you don't want to sell your stock necessarily, you just want to drive footfall, you can use search ads to drive people based on whichever query you choose to bid on. So the way people search has changed. You'll probably notice yourself, 6 and 7 years ago, if you owned a cafe, for example, and you would have to search for like coffee shop near me or cafe near me or cafe Newcastle. You would have to put near me, or you would have to put the location of where you are in order to trigger Google to say, right, I'm going to serve you a map with some listings on. But now, because of everybody having GPS turned on and Google being a bit smarter, you literally just have to search for like cafe or coffee shop or designer clothing, and it will give you a map listing of stores that match that query. So the way people search has changed, the technology's changed. So now you can bid on terms as broad as designer clothing, coffee shop, cafe, without having to have near me or kind of local towns and villages within the search. So I'd say head to Keyword Planner in ads. It's free to use. You can type in some queries and think like, right, what my customers want to buy from me, put those keywords in Google. You can change the location settings, hit search, and it'll give you an idea of how many people in that town, in that city, in that county will be searching for your products and services, which is really good. And then from a campaign perspective, you can set up local targeting around, your store. So if you, again, own a cafe, you might only want to be showing your ads to people within a 5-mile radius, or down to the postcode if you wanted to. I work with councils, and obviously they have specific budgets for specific postcodes, so we do a lot of work with them to make sure we're not going, you can't do radius because you're kind of going into someone else's catchment sometimes, so we have to go down to like the first half of the postcode with them. So yeah, either use that you can either use radius or postcodes or towns, but if you offer a broader service, for example, I work with a local opticians group, so people might travel more than 5 miles to go and get their eyes tested, so we might have a broader catchment. So yeah, you can either go postcode, radius, town, cities, counties, countries.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, I've learnt a lot just in those few minutes. I mean, I was not aware that you don't put near me now, because I still do that. I still like, cafes near me, or
you still can.
DIY.
You still can. It's just Google's got smarter.
But it
these days.
automatically pings it up. And I must admit, thinking about my search when I'm in the local town, and I'm lazy. I do search for a local cafe, even though there's cafes all around, and I'm just literally having a look at the reviews before I even go into them, which is a real change to what I would have done a few years ago, essentially. So a couple of points I just wanted to pick up on. One was the power of the selling your inventory locally. So you can plug in effectively the products that you have in your store, in that local store, and then target specific keywords to people that are in the vicinity of that store, so that they come up first on Google, essentially.
So the way Google Shopping works, it's actually closer to how organic works. With Shopping and Performance Max formats, you don't actually bid on a keyword. You can't say, when someone searches for Reebok trainers, show them this pair of Reebok trainers. It's done based on organic, essentially. So how, from an organic perspective, Google will look at your H1, your title tag, your on-page content, your experience, like all the other things that will kind of make up what Google uses to rank someone organically. Google will use that method, but on a product level. So if someone searches for Reebok shoes, Google looks at every single advertiser in the world in that millisecond and scrapes everyone's product feeds and say, if there is, you might get 5 or 6 retailers on a carousel for you to scroll across or go onto the products tab. You might have 5 or 6 retailers who've got their product title and their product description optimized for Reebok shoes, and the brand attribute might be Reebok. So anyone who's got good quality feed, keyword rich, there's sizes, there's colors, there's really good nice product description, unique product descriptions as well. That's what Google's going to use as the basis to say, I'm going to show you in the first shopping ad slot, or at least like the top 5 or 6. Annoyingly, we can't see exactly where you're placed in that carousel, but click-through rate's a really good indicator that your ads are being seen, are attractive to the potential customers. So I always say to retailers who are, selling Reebok shoes, if you've got the same stock as other retailers, essentially try and take your own photography to make it more unique. Because if you've seen before, if everyone, you see the same shoe in the carousel, you're apart from price, there's no distinguishing factor. So if you do your own product photography, it's really nice to try and improve your click-through rate. And then descriptions as well. So with manufacturers, again, resellers, you might just get the standard description from your original brand. But if you can, just try and optimize it a little bit, make some tweaks, because again, Google's going to give you credit and hopefully put you higher up in that carousel because it's something unique. Because Google doesn't want to offer, if there's 6 retailers all with the same title, same pictures, same product description, there's nothing to differentiate you. So it pays to put a little bit more effort into the titles, the images, and the description for sure.
It's really good advice. And I think that's, you hit on a really important point there that, if you use the same pair of Reebok shoes image that you were given at the time and you're competing against 6 other stores in the local area, there's nothing to differentiate you from them at all. So if you do put the time in, it can make a massive difference, I can imagine, on the click-through rate. Looking at a store that has physical location, cost per acquisition, I imagine, is one of the questions you get asked. How do we know we're getting an ROI on these ads, for example? What kind of advice do you have for companies that are thinking in that way?
For most of my e-com retailers, we work on a ROAS, return on investment model. They usually say either I've got these products are like my hero products, they're always in stock, we've got good levels of sizes, we've got good stock, we've got good margin, then we can set a campaign up for them. So if you make 20% margin, then we'll assume a 500% ROAS is going to be good enough, and then we can optimize to that. If you've got a second set of products that, might be more seasonal, or margins are thinner, or there's more competition, then we can create a new campaign for them and with a new target. So if you only make 10% margin on these separate, exclusive, more common products, then we'll have set a separate target of 1,000%. So we can apply different optimization tactics depending on your margins. And I think a lot of retailers say, right, I've got a blanket 20%, and that's fine because you can, optimize for that. But the smarter retailers know their stock levels, know how their margins differ. We have different strategies for sale, for example. So it's a fine balance between, yes, I want to flog the stock that's last season, but I also have razor thin margins because these products are already discounted. So it's you want to sell quickly, but you don't want to make a loss. So there's different strategies that we can apply to different campaign types. And I think, knowing your margins is key, stock. And that's where I get a better quality conversation, I think, from my clients. And that's fine if, PPC is your point of entry to the store. You're using paid ads to increase brand awareness and try and get that customer. And then hopefully you've got email marketing and hopefully they'll sign up to your, newsletter and sign up socials and stuff like that. So you're once PPC can be the lead in and then the rest of your marketing can kind of keep them loyal essentially. But there's other ways that we can look at customer acquisition and lifetime value. So I work with a couple of clients who have quite a low value product, and that's often the first kind of entry product, the gateway product. And then they've got a really good email marketing set up to try and encourage repeat purchase, upsell, lifetime value, the length of the customer, like life cycle is they have, once someone is a customer with them, they stay for like 5 or 6 years. So it's actually kind of worth making a loss essentially on the customer acquisition piece. Sometimes if you're selling a product for a tenner, sometimes we can push that kind of cost per acquisition to like £8, and you think, I'm not making any money on that first purchase, what's the point? But actually with that long-term view of this is the gateway product, and then actually from that £10 purchase they go on to spend £500 because they know that based on their internal data. Again, that's how we can leverage PPC to drive that, more sales of the gateway product, so they can kind of take care of the rest. So those are the two main ways that I work with my clients.
It's really interesting. I mean, lifetime value I think is often overlooked, isn't it? As something that's not as trackable. But if you've got like a store that sells children's clothing, you didn't know they were there. You find them online. You go into the store and you buy your kids' clothing. 18 years later, you might still be buying clothes in that store.
Yeah, exactly.
They've turned into adults, but it's the place that you always go to, purchase that sort of outfits. And I think that's the thing. It all comes from that first acquisition, but the lifetime value of that customer is potentially a lot more valuable than that first initial cost. And I guess that's where brands can really benefit from using PPC locally. To drive that initial customer into the store that may or may not have realised that they're there. On to customers that you've helped. Can you give me an example of a client that you've got customers for locally and how it's kind of benefited their business?
Yeah, so moving away from the kind of e-com track, I guess, one of the clients that I'm working with at the moment that are really benefiting from the flexibility of PPC is an opticians group. So unlike an e-commerce store where you have, multiple stock, they have 50 practices and growing throughout the UK. And they have a very set target audience. They're very clear on, who they are, what they look like, their interests, and where they live. So they've got their customer data that says on average people travel between 10 miles and 12 miles to visit us. And we can essentially do like a cookie cutter type approach where we're literally going around the country, ring fencing areas that we want to target. So we run the same, like a similar campaign structure. We're bidding on, eye test, eye appointment, eye specialist. We run the same keywords, same structure in each of those locations. And then each of the campaigns is optimized individually. So what might work in Yeovil might not work in Birmingham. We can, after the setup has taken place, we'll then tweak the campaigns depending on what works. Testing different ad copies to again see which combination of headlines and descriptions resonates best. So like there's a store in a practice in London that's very popular with kids. So they have we have a different in-store experience, and it's like, how do we marry the ads up? How does each of their audience bases differ? So how does kind of Morpeth in the northeast, like kind of a quiet country town, how does that differ from in the depths of London? We can see how the conversions differ, the cost per acquisition differs by demographics, by age, by location of the user, their interests. It's interesting to see how the audience differs by each location, and then we can feed that back to the marketing team and say, oh, a lot of the people here are interested in the theatre. Have you thought about doing a partnership with the local theatre to try and get more people to get their eyes tested after going to the theatre? Something like that. It's how we can use that data to then inform wider marketing. And they obviously struggle, not every business is perfect. The books aren't always full. And the benefit of PPC is that we can really dial up, dial down the budget depending on where capacity is. So if one store's put an extension in, they've doubled their capacity, let's put more budget in driving more leads here, because we know on average a kind of a cost per acquisition is X. We know if we put an extra £1,000 into this campaign, how many new customers we're going to get from that. You can also exclude people who are already customers as well, so you're not paying for people who've been before. So that's, we can kind of be a bit more smarter about who we're targeting and where the budget is spent. But I think, yeah, they're a good example of how we can dial up, down the budget, and then learn from the different audience types as well.
That's, it sounds like it's worked really well for especially that company in particular, because they've got locations based all over the UK. With the Google Local, do you see it changing at all with AI coming in, or would you say it's pretty much going to stay similar for the next couple of years?
AI and has been within Google Ads for years. It must have been about, I want to say 8 years ago, that like smart bidding first came on the scene, and that was saying to Google, this is my budget, this is my target ROAS, off you go. And most advertisers were thinking, oh, the robot's going to take our jobs. We were manually changing bids based on performance. That was our job. That was the fundamentals of what we do as PPCers. And then all the advertisers were like, oh, great. We can just like plug and play. We can say, here's the money, off you go, make me my millions. But it obviously needs some human intervention. And it still takes tweaking and refining. It's not as simple as plug and play. And I was saying this to someone else actually the other day, that the barrier to entry for Google Ads, I mean, might be similar across other marketing tactics, is a lot lower these days, because everybody's kind of presented with the same Google Ads setup. When you go to create an ad, you can use generative AI now based on your landing page. Google will scrape your landing page and grab your H1s. It'll grab your call to actions. It'll, grab sections of your website, call to actions, USPs, and put it into your 15 headlines and your 4 descriptions. And you're like, that was my job. Like, I mean, sometimes it can go a bit west. So you do, again, need human eyes on it. But it's Google trying to make things faster, not make it perfect, just give you a helping hand. And I think one of the things Google's trying to do now is make it easier for business owners who don't have huge budgets, who just want to get started, to do it themselves. And I think that's great, because you don't want to always rely on Google's, tech teams or people like me to do that, when you can manage some of it yourself. But it's just when things go wrong, that it gets a bit scary, because it's like hard-earned cash going into Google then. So I think, yes, AI's been around. It will continue to get better. But there's always going to be a place for the human element to kind of sense check things, rein things in, tweak things when kind of point Google in the new direction if things aren't going to plan. There's new product studio as well. So if you sell products, you can upload the picture and you can like remove the background, put a different background in. It's crazy. So you don't necessarily need Photoshop experience or be proficient at InDesign, to make product shots now. Google do it, and you can there's in shopping feeds now, there's a new attribute for kind of generative images, to tell Google, this is my image that I've uploaded and this is one that's been generated from AI, and to A/B test it. So everything's worth a test. So they're trying to be more accommodating for it and make it easier for the user. So I think it is exciting time. It's great. It's just being there to still sense check it. So there's still need for us PPCers out
Definitely.
there.
I mean, I've got a bit of a story of a couple of years ago. So I think it was during the pandemic. So 2020, we came up with our own kind of gift box, because we were hosting virtual events for companies all over the UK. And we thought we'd advertise it on Google ourselves, because at the time we were a bit tight for money. So we didn't have a PPC specialist that we currently now do use. And so we put an advert out there, and it was, we were getting lots of clicks and lots of interactions, and we were getting a couple of inquiries. But ultimately, after about 2 weeks, we'd spent nearly £2,500, and our budget was £250. And we'd not converted a single one. And is when we looked more into detail afterwards, we found it's because we were competing with John Lewis and very high premium brands that we'd forgot to kind of sense check what we were actually targeting. That was a big learning curve. So yeah, you can definitely do it yourself, but I would recommend an expert either double check or employ one to do that for you. Lovely. Well, Hannah, really enjoyed this conversation, learning how to get customers locally on Google. Really valuable. I've learned a hell of a lot today. So much that I didn't know is now I now am aware of that. My everyday life has now changed when I look at Google in the shopping high street. But can you tell our listeners where you can find out more about yourself and your business so they can find you if needed?
Yeah, I'm probably more active on LinkedIn. So my slug is Hannah-Strong-PPC. You can find me on LinkedIn and on my website, zoramarketing.co.uk. I'll be around.
Lovely. And we'll put all of those in the show notes as well afterwards. So thank you very much, Hannah. That's been another episode of We Built This Business, and we'll be back next week.